Hello and welcome back to another video. Today we're going through 5 of the most interesting rare career mode saves that I haven't seen too many people playing. I fully admit I'm sure people have played these career modes, there's probably even YouTube footage of people playing them, but they're just ones that I've never seen on Instagram accounts or the FIFA careers Reddit, so it won't include the likes of a Harrogate or a Manchester United in this list. So let's get straight into the teams because that's what you're here for. We're going to begin in Portugal with a team called Santa Clara. So this team is almost as close to Canada as it is to Spain, which of course is Portugal's neighbour, because they play in the island chain in the middle of the Atlantic called the Azores. They've played in Europe before even. They're the furthest team in a westerly direction to ever play in Europe. So you can imagine if they ended up playing against someone like Vladivostok, who are a Russian team who are also eligible, but they play near North Korea, it would be about a 16-hour flight for that European game. On first glance, you might notice that they have a very similar badge and kit to Benfica. They're not actually linked, but they do have a similar kind of ethos, trying to develop young players and trying to get as many South Americans into European football as possible. This season, they're actually playing really well. They have the best goal difference outside of the Big Four, and they're sitting in 7th place with a definite chance of getting European football next season. As I mentioned before, they do have a massive bias towards Brazilians, especially up front, where they have 4 or 5 of their best players are all from Brazil. Veteran Portuguese winger Ukra is their talisman, and I've linked a pretty interesting Instagram video in the description below, so make sure you check that out if you do decide to play as Santa Clara, because it will give you a bit more character and a bit more information on why you should continue to pick him even though he's not their best player. Santa Clara like to play a very progressive attacking game, and they're not afraid to do this even against the likes of Porto, Sporting or Benfica. All of this adds up to something that I think is actually a really interesting career. And if you're like me, you'll probably also think their kits are pretty nice too, which of course is one of the most important things of starting a career mode. Okay, so that's Santa Clara out the way. Hopefully you consider them, because they're actually a very interesting team, and if you do consider them, please read up on them and you'll find a bit more information than I've given you here just because this is a brief overview. Anyway, now we're going from the far west of Europe all the way to Eastern Europe. As far as I know, Wisla Krakow are the only team on FIFA to have their chairman as a playable player in their squad. Of course, their chairman is Jakub Błaszczykowski, who used to play for Dortmund. They're 14 times winners of the league, but they haven't won it for 10 years, and that's part of the reason that Błaszczykowski has decided to return and take over the club. With such bad financial issues, they have almost no budget, which is very unusual for such a famous team in FIFA, but what they do have is 2 very talented players in Starzinski at 16 years old and Buxa at 17-year-old. They're both very highly rated, but they're not going to be at Błaszczykowski's level for a few more seasons. They have one of the most intense derbies in Europe against KS Krakowa, which is of course the Krakow derby, and this game is recognised as probably the greatest rivalry in Polish football, but it's not the only derby that Krakow have. The match contested between Wisla Krakow and Legia Warsaw is recognised as probably the biggest match in Polish football. These two sides were the most successful clubs during the start of this millennium. The fact that Warsaw and Krakow are also Poland's 2 largest cities makes the rivalry a bit more intense further. The fact that Krakow used to be the capital of Poland before Warsaw also plays a pretty big part in this derby. So this is definitely a team if you want some intense, passionate matches, you want an interesting owner that you can actually play with, good young players, and it's a fairly rare career mode. I don't think I've seen too many people playing this one. So again, definitely consider Krakow in one of your final saves of FIFA this year. Staying nearby to Poland, we're going up to Denmark, and we're going to FC Nordsjaelland. They actually have the youngest squad in the game, with an average age of just 20 years old. The club's actually owned by a Ghanaian academy, which is fairly rare because usually you'll see European clubs owning the African academies, not the other way around. But Nordsjaelland are actually trying to achieve an 100% academy team. They're doing a pretty good job at this too, with their oldest starting player being just 23 years old. They do have a few well-known older players in the squad, but they do rarely play. The most famous player in the team at the moment is definitely Johan Giroud, who played nearly 100 times for Arsenal between 2004 and 2014. Even though the squad is very young, the club itself was only formed in July 2013, making it just under 18 years old. Nordsjaelland definitely has a trophy cabinet ready to be filled, and they want to fill it using lots of academy players, which of course is always going to be a very fun save in any FIFA career mode. Our fourth team actually doesn't exist anymore, but they won the league last year. We're talking about Jiangsu Suning FC. They've only got enough players for a main 11 and a bench, with a squad of just 18 players. They have an okay amount of money. It's not the best in the league, but it's also quite far away from being the worst. But their first team is definitely the worst in the league. Their average rating is terrible. It's around the low 60s, which when you compare it to the league average of around 75 is actually super low. They have no foreign players, so you can splash out as much as you want on those. And honestly, if you want to compete, you're going to have to do that and pick the foreign players pretty well. As I said, the club no longer exists, even though they won the league last year, and that's the main reason that the club has so few players. The challenge here really is to try and win the league again, but it's going to be very difficult in the first season to try and protect your crown as King of China. But who doesn't love a challenge? It would definitely be a fun one to try out if you are into that kind of thing. Our fifth team is actually going to be the exact opposite of Nordsjaelland. Sivasspor have the oldest squad in the game. The average age is just under 30 years old, but they do actually have some reasonably famous players in their squad. Max Gradel used to play for Leeds, Tyler Boyd is an American international, and Arouna Kone was of course an Everton forward for quite a few seasons. The goal of a Sivasspor save would absolutely be to rebuild the team with young talent. This is one of the most popular challenges for a FIFA player to do, so if you do choose a team to do this with, make sure you consider Sivasspor for your next career mode. I haven't mentioned this, but they're also in the Europa League for the first time in their career mode, so you'll have one season using these older players, trying to get as far as you can in that competition, and then you need to start the process of qualifying again but with your younger team. Anyway, that's the last team on the list, but I thought I'd mention one more that I haven't really researched too well, but I thought would be very interesting. And that team is Infc Magdeburg. They're the former East German Giants, and they were the only East German team to actually win a European title. They won the Cup Winners' Cup in 1974, a competition that you might have heard of if you've watched that Newport video I made a long time ago. With Red Bull Leipzig being such a famous and successful team these days, Magdeburg would be a relevant rival for them in East Germany if you can get them back into the Bundesliga, and you could possibly do something where you only try and sign players from eastern side of Germany or go for Eastern European players and try and build up what they used to have when they were a Soviet-owned team. But like I said, I haven't looked too much into this, but I do think it would be a very interesting team, and it's probably one I've never seen anyone do a career mode on FIFA or Instagram or Twitter or anything really. I think the same could be said for all of these teams. If you've done a career mode with Nordsjaelland, Sivasspor, Jiangsu, Wisla Krakow, Magdeburg or Santa Clara, please do let me know, because especially if you've posted about it, it'd be pretty interested to read a story on one of these kind of guys. You know, they've all got interesting reasons to play them. It would be interesting to see how you took the challenges on, and if you did anything special. For example, with Santa Clara, maybe you went for only players from the Azores. I mean, I don't think that's going to be possible, but you never know. Someone might have done that as a hardcore challenge. But anyway, yeah, that's about all we have time for in this video, unfortunately. I could go on and on about some of these teams, especially Santa Clara. They'd definitely be my choice if I was doing one of these saves, and I potentially might move to them in Season 3 of my career mode. A little spoiler there. But yeah, hopefully enjoyed watching this video, and I'll see you in the next one that I make, hopefully very soon. Cheers!